For 12 years, Henry Noonan never walked, and every doctor called it permanent. His billionaire father spent millions chasing answers and got the same verdict every time. Then, the Maid saw his foot move, and everything cracked. Buried inside his private medical file was a page that shouldn't exist, patient code 42983. His father thought he was paying for a cure, but he was actually funding a conspiracy. Tom Noonan was a billionaire. Tech empire, private estates, more money than most people see in 10 lifetimes. But his son Henry was born paralyzed, birth injury, spinal trauma during delivery. 12 years old, never took a single step, never spoke a single word. The trauma left him silent, trapped inside a body that wouldn't respond. Tom tried everything. Cypher Medical Center, Shanghai Alpine Clinic, chemical bath ward, specialists who charge thousands per hour. They ran scans, tests, and experimental treatments. All of them said the same thing: irreversible. Accept it. But Tom couldn't accept it because Henry was all he had left. His wife Susan died giving birth to that boy. So Tom kept searching, kept spending, and kept begging God for an answer. What he didn't know, the answer wasn't coming from a hospital. It was coming from the woman he just hired to clean his floors. Sharon was a maid, 31. No degree, no credentials, just a woman trying to pay her deaf cousin's assisted living bills. Her brother David had been a paramedic. He died saving a stranger and taught her one thing before he left this world: the body tells the truth when people stop listening. And Sharon noticed something about Henry that every specialist had missed, something in his old medical records, something buried on purpose. Tom Manor sat on 47 acres in Capitol Ridge, stone walls, iron gates, gardens that looked like they belonged in magazines. The kind of place people drove past slowly, staring, wondering what it was like to live inside all that money. But money doesn't buy everything. Tom Noonan learned that the hard way. He built an empire. Tech software that changed how hospitals tracked patient records made him $300 million by the time he turned 35. And met Susan at a charity gala. She wore a blue dress, laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny. They got married 6 months later, had a son 2 years after that. And Susan died on the delivery table while Henry took his first breath, 12 years ago. Tom remembered every second of that day, the monitors going flat, the doctors running, the silence that followed. The way they handed him a baby boy with a broken spine and damaged vocal cords, born paralyzed, born silent. The manor was silent now, always silent. Servants moved through the hallways without speaking, because Mr. Noonan liked things quiet. Every surface gleamed, every corner held no dust. Marble floors reflected the chandeliers, windows sparkled, fresh flowers arrived every Monday, arranged in crystal vases, replaced before they wilted. But nothing in Tom Manor felt alive. It felt like a museum, like a place where something precious had been lost and everything else was just trying to fill the space. Henry lived in the East Wing. Specially designed, wheelchair accessible, hospital-grade equipment installed in every room. Nurses rotated in 8-hour shifts. Physical therapists came 3 times a week, occupational therapists twice. A neurologist visited monthly. They all had the same look on their faces when they worked with Henry: professional, detached, like they were treating a condition, not a child. They documented everything, logged his vitals, tracked his muscle atrophy, adjusted his medications. But none of them really looked at him, not the way a person looks at another person. Tom watched from the doorway sometimes, watched them move Henry's legs through range of motion exercises, bend his knees, rotate his ankles. Henry stared at the ceiling. 12 years old, blonde hair, his mother's eyes, trapped inside a body that wouldn't move. Tom spent $63 million trying to fix what the doctor said couldn't be fixed. Flew Henry to clinics across the world, begged God, begged science, got the same answer every time: permanent. Subscribe now and stay to the end, because I am going to show you one detail hidden in Henry's medical records that quietly explains why certain hospitals profit from keeping patients sick. And you will not unsee it once I point it out. This is not just about one boy. This is about a system, and we are about to break down exactly how they did it, step by step. Sharon Plunkett rode the bus from Boston Row every morning at 5:30. 2 transfers, 90 minutes each way. She worked 3 jobs, cleaned offices downtown Monday through Wednesday, stocked shelves at a grocery store Thursday nights. And now, starting this week, she cleaned Tom Manor Friday through Sunday. $12 an hour, more than the other jobs paid, enough to cover what Graham's assisted living didn't. Graham was her cousin, 24 years old, lost his hearing when he was 16, meningitis, came on fast, fever, then seizures, then silence. The doctors saved his life but couldn't save his ears. He lived at Harbor Care now, a facility that specialized in deaf and hard of hearing adults. Cost $1,100 a month. Insurance covered some. Sharon covered the rest. She thought about her brother David sometimes, wondered what he would say if he could see her now. David was a paramedic, good at his job, loved helping people. He died 3 years ago on his day off, saw a car accident on the highway, pulled over, started CPR on a stranger while waiting for the ambulance. The stranger lived. David collapsed from a heart attack right there on the shoulder of the road. 32 years old, gone before the ambulance arrived. He used to tell Sharon one thing over and over: the body tells the truth when people stop listening. She didn't understand what he meant back then. She was starting to now. The manor was different from any place Sharon had cleaned before. Bigger, quieter, colder. She was hired to be seen but never noticed, to fix things that broke while the family pretended nothing ever did. Dust the furniture, vacuum the rugs, polish the silver, stay invisible, don't ask questions, don't make noise, don't look anyone in the eye for too long. Sharon visited Graham every Thursday after her grocery store shift, brought him cookies from the bakery section. They sat in the common room and talked with their hands. He asked how the new job was going. She signed back that it was fine. Big house, sad house. He asked if she was tired. She smiled. Always tired, but tired was okay. Tired meant bills got paid. Tired meant Graham had a place to live where people understood him, where he wasn't alone. David taught her that. Sacrifice wasn't supposed to feel easy. It was supposed to feel like love. Mrs. Marianne Washington had been head housekeeper at Tom Manor for 30 years. She wore her hair in a tight bun, navy blue dress, sensible shoes. She walked Sharon through the manor on her first day, pointing out closets, explaining schedules, listing rules. Lots of rules. You arrive at 6, you leave at 2, you clean the main floor first, then the guest wing, then the east wing. You do not use your phone during work hours, you do not eat in the dining areas, you do not speak to Mr. Noonan unless he speaks to you first, and you absolutely do not interact with his son. Sharon nodded. Tried to look professional. Tried not to think about how much she needed this job. Mrs. Washington stopped walking, turned to face Sharon directly. Her voice dropped lower, colder. Mr. Noonan's son is not your concern. You do not speak to him. You do not touch him. You do not look at him longer than necessary. If you see him in distress, you find a nurse. You do not try to help. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. The last maid we hired thought she could help. Thought she knew better than the doctors. She tried to move the boy's wheelchair without permission, said she was just being kind. She was escorted out by security that same afternoon. It wasn't a warning. It was a threat wrapped in professionalism. Sharon felt her stomach tighten. She thought about the bus ride home, thought about Graham's next payment due in 3 weeks, thought about how easy it would be to lose everything. Mrs. Washington's face softened slightly. Just for a moment. She smoothed her dress, looked out the window at the gardens. I've worked here a long time, Sharon, longer than most. You know how I manage that. I learned what battles to fight and what battles to leave alone. Mr. Noonan has spent millions on his son. Millions. Every expert in the world has looked at that boy. If they can't help him, we certainly can't. Our job is to keep this house running, not to fix what's already broken. And Sharon, Mr. Noonan keeps certain medical files locked. If you ever see sealed folders with the Cipher Center logo, you leave them alone. Cipher made it very clear that my position depends on discretion. Those files are not your concern either. Sharon wondered if Mrs. Washington believed that. Wondered if she'd always believed it, or if 30 years of working here had taught her to believe it. There was something in the older woman's eyes, something tired, something that looked like regret buried so deep it had turned into stone. Do your job, stay in your lane, you'll be fine. Sharon nodded again, but fine felt like a lie they were both pretending to believe. Real quick, pause and drop a comment below. Tell me if you've ever been in a situation where you knew something was wrong but were told to stay silent. Share your thoughts, because this community is built on people who refuse to look away. It happened on Sharon's 5th day. She was carrying a silver tray down the East Wing hallway. Tea service. Mrs. Washington insisted everything be presented on silver, even if no one was drinking it. Sharon balanced the tray carefully, watched her feet. The marble floors were slippery when they'd just been polished. A door at the end of the hall caught the wind, slammed hard. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Sharon jumped. The tray slipped from her hands. Porcelain shattered, silver clattered, tea spread across the floor in a dark puddle. Sharon froze. Her heart pounded. Mrs. Washington was going to fire her. 5 days. She'd lasted 5 days. But then she saw something that made her forget about the broken china. Henry's door was open. He sat in his wheelchair by the window, and his right foot had moved. Not a lot, just a few inches. A jerk, a twitch, but it moved. Sharon stared. The doctor said complete paralysis. Complete. She'd heard Mrs. Washington say it a dozen times. Complete meant permanent. Complete meant nothing worked below the damage. Complete meant nothing should move. But his foot moved. She saw it, clear as day, a reaction to the sound, the door slamming, the tray crashing. Something startled him and his body responded. She knelt down slowly, started picking up pieces of broken porcelain. Her hands shook, her mind raced. Maybe she imagined it, maybe it was just a muscle spasm. The nurses talked about those sometimes, involuntary movements that didn't mean anything. But this felt different. This happened exactly when the noise happened. Cause and effect. Stimulus and response. David's voice echoed in her head. The body tells the truth when people stop listening. He used to say that on calls. When a patient said they were fine but their pulse said otherwise. When the vitals told a different story than the words. The body doesn't lie, can't lie. It just reacts. Sharon looked up at Henry. He was staring at her now, 12 years old, blue eyes. He blinked once, slow, deliberate, like he knew she'd seen something, like he'd been waiting 12 years for someone to notice. And Sharon realized something that made her blood run cold. If his foot could move, if his body could react to sudden sound, then maybe what everyone kept calling complete wasn't complete at all. If you care about medical transparency, you need to subscribe right now, because at the end of this video, I'm revealing one secret that nobody in that manor understood. There's a reason those doctors kept Henry paralyzed, and when I show you the financial strategy behind it at the end, you'll realize this wasn't neglect. It was a business model. Trust me, the secret is worth it. Sharon started small, testing, watching, being careful. She waited until the nurses rotated shifts, that 15-minute gap when one left and the other hadn't arrived yet. She'd go into Henry's room with her cleaning supplies, act normal, but she was studying him. First test. She dropped a book while dusting his shelf, not close to him, across the room. His foot twitched, just barely. Second test. She clapped her hands behind him, his shoulders tensed. Third test. She rolled a ball past his chair, his eyes tracked it. His body leaned slightly. These weren't what everyone kept calling complete paralysis. David used to tell her about reflexes, how they work even when nerves are damaged, but these responses felt different, more aware, more present. Sharon knelt beside his wheelchair one afternoon. The nurse had just left. 14 minutes until the next one arrived. She looked Henry in the eyes, spoke quietly. "Can you hear me?" He blinked once, slow, deliberate. Sharon's heart raced. She remembered working with Graham, learning sign language, learning that communication didn't need sound. It just needed intention. 1 blink for yes, 2 blinks for no. Can you do that? 1 blink. Can you feel your legs at all? 1 blink. Then his eyes filled with tears. But you can't control them? 2 blinks. Sharon understood. He wasn't completely paralyzed. Something else was blocking the signals, something the specialists either missed or chose to ignore. 12 years trapped inside himself, aware, conscious, feeling pressure and sensation while everyone around him treated him like he was broken beyond repair. They didn't speak. They couldn't. Henry had no voice, but in the silence, they built a language no one else could see. Sharon tested him every day after that, watched for the responses that didn't match what everyone claimed: the startle reflex, the tracking movements, the muscle tension when he anticipated sound. Every test showed her that something was wrong with the diagnosis. Henry's body was responding in ways complete paralysis shouldn't allow. Something was compressing his signals, something the specialists missed, something they maybe didn't want to find. And that thought terrified her more than losing her job ever could. Sharon was organizing Henry's bookshelf on a Sunday afternoon. Medical journals mostly. Thick books with complicated titles, books that looked like they'd never been opened. She pulled them out one by one, wiped the dust, checked the spines. One of them felt different, heavier on one side, like something was tucked inside. She opened it carefully. A piece of paper fell out, folded into the shape of an apple. Intricate, deliberate. Someone had spent time on this, someone with working hands. Sharon unfolded it slowly. It wasn't just paper, it was a photocopy, medical records, Cipher Medical Center, dated 8 years ago. Henry would have been 4 years old, and attached to it, a sticky note in handwriting Sharon didn't recognize. They buried this. Patient code 42983. He deserves to know. She read the medical report, and her hands started shaking. Patient exhibits C4-C5 spinal compression secondary to birth injury with viable nerve conductivity below lesion. At age 4, advanced motor evoked potential equipment became available at Cipher, revealing 92% conductivity. Earlier facilities lacked capability for this measurement. Surgical decompression recommended within 6-month window for optimal outcome. Alternative: maintain current immobilization protocol for ongoing monitoring per protocol contract. Sharon read it again, then again. Viable nerve conductivity, 92%. They didn't have the equipment to measure it when he was born, but at 4, they finally tested properly, and they found out Henry could have been fixed. 8 years ago, when he was 4, before the window closed, before 12 years of being trapped in a wheelchair, the doctors knew. They tested it, proved it, put it in his file. And then what? Nothing. No surgery, no decompression, just ongoing monitoring per protocol contract. She flipped through the other pages. Treatment plans, billing codes, something called the TOM protocol, a structured care agreement between Cipher Medical Center and Noonan Holdings. Experimental treatments, $50,000 per month, renewable annually, as long as patient remains in immobilized status. Physician ownership stake in protocol outcomes listed in footnote 7. Sharon did the math in her head. $4,800,000, almost $5 million for treatments that didn't fix anything. Treatments that weren't supposed to fix anything because fixing him would end the contract. They knew. They always knew. And they chose his suffering over his cure because his suffering was profitable. Sharon looked at the origami apple in her hands. Someone folded this. Someone with access to Henry's files. A nurse maybe. A therapist. Someone who saw what was happening and couldn't stay silent, but was too afraid to speak up directly. So they left evidence where Henry might find it. Where someone might find it. A whistleblower who knew they'd be destroyed if they came forward, but couldn't let this continue. Patient code 42983. Henry. He'd been screaming in silence for 8 years, and someone finally tried to help him. Until now. If you're still watching, you're exactly the kind of person this channel was built for. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. Because this exact pattern of medical fraud and financial exploitation shows up in another billionaire family case I'm covering soon, and the strategy Sharon uses here becomes even more important in that story. Sharon couldn't sleep that night. She lay in her tiny apartment in Boston Row staring at the ceiling. The origami apple sat on her nightstand. Evidence of a crime. Proof that doctors had lied. But what was she supposed to do with it? If she showed anyone, she'd be fired. Mrs. Washington would say she stole private medical records. Tom Noonan's lawyers would bury her. She'd lose the job, lose the income. Graham would lose his home. And Henry would still be in that wheelchair because who was going to believe a maid over a team of specialists with a signed contract? She got up at 3 a.m, drove to Greenwood Cemetery. David's grave was in the back corner under an oak tree. Simple headstone, his name, his dates. He tried. That's what Sharon had them carve, because that's what mattered. Not that he succeeded, not that he saved everyone, just that he tried. She sat on the grass, talked to him like he was still there. I don't know what to do. I found something bad, really bad, and if I say something, I lose everything. But if I don't say something, that boy stays trapped. And he knows David. Someone tried to help him, and it wasn't enough. The wind moved through the oak leaves. Sharon closed her eyes, remembered the last thing David told her before he left for his shift that day. You can't save everyone, Sharon, but you have to try to save someone. Otherwise, what's the point? He died saving a stranger, didn't even know the man's name, just saw someone who needed help and decided that was enough. Someone had to try, and if David was here now, he wouldn't ask if it was safe. He'd ask if it was right. Sharon pulled out the origami apple, unfolded it, read the words again. Viable nerve conductivity, 92%. Patient code 42983. She thought about Henry blinking. 1 for yes, 2 for no. 12 years of silence, 12 years of being conscious while the world treated him like he was already gone. Faith isn't knowing you'll succeed. It's moving forward when failure means losing everything. Her hands shook as she refolded the paper, put it back in her pocket. She whispered a prayer, simple, honest. I don't know what I'm doing, but neither did David. And he did it anyway. It happened at 2 in the morning. Sharon was sleeping in the staff quarters when the alarm went off. Henry's room. She ran down the hallway. 2 nurses were already there. Henry was in distress, not seizing, worse. His breathing was shallow, labored. His lips were turning blue. One nurse was checking his oxygen levels. The other was trying to reposition him. Sharon stood in the doorway, watching, and then she saw it. His neck. The angle was wrong. His head had slipped forward in the wheelchair during the night. The cervical support collar had been removed earlier for a skin check and never replaced. The weight of his head pressing down, compressing, and she remembered the report. C4, C5 compression. If pressure increased on those vertebrae, it could affect the phrenic nerve, the nerve that controls breathing. David taught her that, taught her how to stabilize spinal injuries in the field. The nurses were panicking, calling for the doctor, preparing emergency oxygen. Sharon moved closer. She didn't think, just acted. She positioned herself behind Henry's wheelchair, placed her hands on either side of his head, not twisting, not pulling, just supporting, aligning, taking the weight off his neck, holding him steady the way David showed her. Nobody move him. His spine is compressed. If you move him wrong, it gets worse. We need imaging, now. One of the nurses stared at her. You're the maid. You can't. I said now. Call the ambulance. Tell them possible spinal compression with respiratory compromise. Tell them to bring a cervical collar and backboard. And tell them patient code 42983 has viable conductivity and this is treatable. The nurse blinked. How do you know his patient code? Sharon didn't answer, just held Henry's head steady, kept his spine aligned, and prayed she was right. Henry's breathing improved, slightly. The blue faded from his lips. His eyes met Sharon's. One slow blink. Thank you. The door burst open. Tom Noonan stood there, saw Sharon's hands on his son's neck, saw the nurses standing back, saw the fear on everyone's faces, and started screaming. Get your hands off my son! Tom Noonan's voice shattered the room. He saw Sharon, saw her hands on Henry's neck, saw his son struggling to breathe, saw the nurses backing away, and he assumed the worst. Security arrived in seconds. 2 men in black suits. They grabbed Sharon by the arms, started to pull her away from Henry. No, don't move him. His spine. Nobody listened. Tom was calling the police. Mrs. Washington appeared in the doorway, face pale. The paramedics arrived. Sharon was screaming about the origami apple, about patient code 42983, about viable conductivity. One of the paramedics stopped, looked at her. What did you say? Patient code 42983, Cipher Medical Center 8 years ago. C4, C5 compression with 92% conductivity. Check the records. They buried it. There's a protocol contract tied to keeping him immobilized. The paramedic's face changed. I used to work rotations at Cipher before I quit. Those protocol contracts have been flagged in 3 other cases I know of. Where's the file? Sharon pointed to Henry's bookshelf. Medical journal. 3rd shelf. Someone left evidence folded inside. The paramedic stabilized Henry's neck properly. got him on a backboard, secured the cervical collar, loaded him into the ambulance, and Sharon was dragged to the security office. She'd done exactly what she knew would happen. She'd intervened. She'd tried. And now she was going to lose everything. But at the hospital, something changed. Dr. Stanley Cornish ran an emergency scan on Henry, checked his spine, checked his nerve responses, then went completely silent. He stared at the screen for 3 full minutes, asked the nurse to pull Henry's historical records, all of them, going back 12 years. He searched for patient code 42983, found the buried file from Cipher Medical Center, read it twice, saw the protocol contract attached, saw the physician ownership footnote. His face went pale. He walked into the waiting room where Tom was pacing, showed him the scans, old and new, side by side, showed him the contract, the footnote, the billing history. "Mr. Noonan, your son's spinal compression was always treatable. Someone made sure you never knew, and they had a financial incentive to keep you in the dark. This contract pays out bonuses to physicians as long as the patient remains in long-term immobilized monitoring." At age 4, when they finally had the equipment to measure his nerve conductivity, they found 92% function. They could have fixed him then. Instead, they buried the report and locked him into this protocol. Fixing Henry would have ended their revenue stream. Tom's legs gave out. He sat down hard, stared at the scans. At the words written 8 years ago, viable nerve conductivity, 92%, surgical decompression recommended, he'd spent $63 million, flown around the world, begged God for a miracle. And the whole time, the cure was right there in a file someone buried, someone who wanted him to keep paying, keep begging, keep funding a protocol that would never work because it was never supposed to work. I threw millions at the best doctors in the world, and they were the ones who caged him. Tom found Sharon 2 hours later. She was sitting in the security holding room, waiting for the police. He walked in. She stood up, expected him to yell, expected him to destroy her, but he didn't. He knelt, right there on the floor in front of her, and when he finally spoke, his voice broke. "You saw my son when I only saw his diagnosis. Forgive me." 3 months later, Henry walked. Emergency surgery relieved the compression that night. Full decompression at C4, C5. Physical therapy taught his muscles how to work again. It was slow, hard, painful, but he walked. Sharon was there the day he took his first real steps, shaky, uncertain, but real. He walked past the nurses, past the doctors, past Mrs. Washington, who'd resigned the week after the truth came out. She couldn't stay after admitting Cipher had made it clear her job depended on keeping certain files locked and certain questions unasked. Henry walked to Sharon first, smiled, then turned toward his father. Tom catches him when he stumbles. They held each other, cried, and on Henry's nightstand, the origami apple sat in a small frame. Patient code 42983 written on the fold, a reminder that truth can be hidden but never destroyed. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to look. Click the video on your right to see the 3 other medical conspiracy cases where everyday people exposed billion-dollar fraud, the contract loopholes hospitals exploited, and the one patient code that changes everything. You'll see the patterns these institutions use, the mistakes families make, and the exact moment when the truth finally comes out.